Hello there, listeners. It's Susie New from the Australian Society of Anaesthetists, and welcome to our podcast. It's called Australian Anaesthesia, and it's where we talk about all things relevant to anaesthesia in Australia. Well, it's coming to that time of year again, and that is the final Viva exam. So what we have today is another episode from our new series, which is focused on the anaesthesia Viva exams. If this exam is something that is a distant or not too distant memory for you, then I recommend listening to this podcast as a great refresher. If you're doing that, don't forget to claim listening as part of your continuing professional development. The Practice Viva podcasts are brought to you by Drs. Viva and Kaylee Jordan, who are featured on the cover art. I can't imagine two better anaesthetists to create these podcasts. Vida is the ASA Education Officer and one-time chair of the college's final exam committee. Kaylee won the prize for the primary exam and a merit for the final exam. Both of them have been tireless in providing the ASA online Viva practice sessions and in their enthusiasm for supporting trainees through the exam process. How these are going to work is we'll share the Viva STEM with you here, but to access the full episode of this Viva podcast, you'll need to log into the ASA website and go to the ASA education page. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. In there, you'll get the STEM, the rest of the Viva questions, as well as Vida and Kaylee's discussion of the questions and how they might approach answering them. You'll also find on that page full-length episodes of all the Viva podcasts, as well as videos from the Practice Viva nights. All right, let's get into this week's Viva question.
You're working in the pre-admission clinic of a tertiary centre. A 40-year-old woman is booked for a total thyroidectomy for a large goiter with possible retrosternal extension. The patient has no other known comorbidities and weighs 54 kilograms. What aspects of history and examination would you seek to further assess this patient?
Well, there you go. Sounds like it might be a stormy day for doing thyroid surgery. As I said before, to find out the rest of the questions and answers, please log into the ASA website. If you're interested in a little refresher for thyroid surgery, then I also recommend you check out the Australian Society of Anaesthetists Anaesthesia Recipe Book. The recipe book compiles anaesthesia techniques for some common and not so common surgeries and procedures. These tips have been shared by ASA members who are anaesthetists and who may have given that particular anaesthetic hundreds, if not thousands of times. And yes, there is one for total thyroidectomy. Think of it like the 10-minute refresher you might want for an anaesthetic that you haven't given for a while, or a sneak peek into how someone else gives an anaesthetic. It's only available for members of the Australian Society of Anaesthetists and can be found on the ASA website on the ASA Ed page, which stands for ASA Education. We do have a sample of the anaesthesia recipe book videos on the ASA YouTube channel, and I'll put a link to that channel as well as a link to the full videos in the podcast episode notes. And finally, did you know that the ASA produces medical warning cards? They are the size of a business card, and the idea is that if you happen to have a patient who's had a severe anaesthetic incident, you fill out the details on the back of the card, and the patient can carry it in their wallet or their phone and hopefully have it on hand to alert any health professionals in the future. I always carry a few blank ones in my wallet. I hope we don't ever need to use them, but they're super handy for those rare situations. They can be purchased from the ASA website. You don't need to be an ASA member, and I'll share a link to that page in the podcast notes, or just go to the ASA website and search medical warning card. Otherwise, good luck with studying, good luck with the exams. I hope your anaesthetics are going smoothly and without incident. And of course, I hope you're staying safe and well out there. You've been listening to an episode of the Australian Anaesthesia podcast, which can be found on all the major podcast hosting platforms as well as YouTube. This podcast is produced by the Australian Society of Anaesthetists and hosted by me, Dr. Susie New, with music created by Dr. Mark Suss. The Australian Society of Anaesthetists was formed in 1934, and our vision is for every anaesthetist in Australia to be at their best, providing the highest quality anaesthesia and perioperative care through excellent technical and non-technical skills. We also hope this means that you are functioning at your best when you are away from work. In this podcast, we have conversations that seek to inform, challenge and inspire so that you keep performing at your best. Members of the ASA can access full versions of all the episodes by logging into the ASA website, which is asa.org.au. If you are listening on your favourite podcast app, then feel free to follow or subscribe so that you can receive the latest episodes as we do publish regularly. If you have any questions or feedback, please feel free to email us on asa@asa.org.au. We hope you enjoyed listening.